I'm that girl who loves to keep her emotions in balance, in check, and have beautiful peace and harmony. And that is a really great luxury to have after all of the inner work that I have been able to address and process and heal from and grow from and all that fantastic stuff. And with the blessing of being able to understand and learn from all our guides, all of my clients' subconsciouses and every being that has come in to give us profound information in sessions, I have gobbled up all of that information and applied it to the best of my capability. It's fantastic times, but it has been an intensive journey. And it is a roller coaster ride of emotions, and it has been profoundly life-changing, just understanding this information. So I was talking to someone the other day about how challenging it can be to listen to this information and understand this information and trust this information and be able to sort of brace ourselves, trusting that everything moving forward has to be as it is because of the experiences and the lessons provided for all during these interesting times ahead. And so we're sort of all bracing ourselves for this as it unfolds, but also then we're still living in the 3D. And so we sort of feel like we're in two worlds at the moment, but not. And I know that it gets tricky when lots of people say that, I'm really in the fifth dimension, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so right now, physically, we're not in the fifth dimension. I know we all wish we were, but there are still things to have experienced. There is still much that needs to unfold for those people to have these experiences. So while we are quite comfortable with our life journey, we have done everything that we're supposed to do. We understand our life purpose, we understand our life missions, and we're moving forward as given instructions and recommendations from our teams. We are on a pause while we are waiting for everyone to have these experiences. There is no escaping experiences and lessons. It's sort of not possible at this point. And if there is someone that is too dense, too stuck, and really, really, really refusing to do what they are supposed to be doing for their life purpose and contracts, we know that they could have earlier exit points because it's just too draining for their whole higher self and subconscious, and because everything's connected. It did sound quite brutal, didn't it, when we heard about the farmer sort of weeding out those plants that aren't thriving. And it's not bad. We know that death isn't bad. We know that it is just experiences. And yesterday I was having a fantastic conversation with someone who was a practitioner, and she felt really, she wanted to share with me her experience in one of her sessions, which was that horrible feeling as a practitioner when your client is crying and you feel so, first of all, you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm putting my client through this. This is horrible. I feel terrible. Then you feel really awkward because you don't quite know what to say or do. And then your feelings of empathy are just come flooding in. And sometimes your emotions can get overwhelming too. I know I've certainly cried in quite a few sessions as well. But you can't not. And I found it when I found in my experiences with these sessions, I wanted to be so professional and so diligent that I kind of cut off my own emotions as the best as I could to focus on my client. And then my client would go home after we unpacked all of that session. And then I would just pull my eyes out because it was like, holy shoot, that was such an overwhelming experience. Their death scenes in their other lifetimes were horrendous. And you don't have the luxury as a practitioner to really be indulgent with your own emotions and play with your own feelings and worries and fears. You actually have to put them aside. And I remember one time through a client talking to Dolores Cannon, who was another practitioner, and I asked her, how did you cope with these emotions? How did you cope with hearing all of this really heartbreaking experiences, hasn't humanity just been horrific to itself? And she said that, yeah, she had to pause her own feelings. Of course, she was still human. And she said she would just, she would wait until the client left, and she would cry alone, sometimes in the car and things like that. And it's just like, oh my, I felt really upsetting to think that Dolores herself was crying by herself, trying to process these emotions. And then that's when she reminded me, wow, you do the same thing. And I think most practitioners probably do the same thing. We're so focused on being the practitioners and helping our clients the best that we can. We sort of can't have the luxury of processing our own emotions. And when I was sharing this with the practitioner yesterday, I felt like all this kind of like trauma that I had sort of suppressed and hadn't actually properly unpacked from certain sessions that were really traumatic for the client and for me, they got to have profound healing because it always had carried on that trauma. But hearing it with fresh ears and just knowing these life, we all know that, there is much different lives and different experiences, but when you get to hear in lots of gruesome details, that event of many brutal exit points. And then, of course, you want to help your client understand it by the significance and the purpose of and the lessons for it. And that's all fantastic. And it makes so much sense for why the subconscious brought those lives into the session. And so it's kind of strange, I have to say, you meet these incredible people who want sessions because I've got curious questions for today, and they're so lovely and they share so much beautiful experiences of themselves and their hopes and plans for the future. And then, fast forward a little bit and they're reliving a horrific death scene. It is quite heartbreaking, but you have to just process it through. And it does feel like this is why it's so great for practitioners to get together to be able to share these things. While we can totally respect the purposes and the lessons and the life contracts, all that valid stuff, we still have this impact from our emotions. And so it's, we still have to be human and process it too. But it's extraordinary. And so when I was talking to the practitioner and just sort of mentioning some of the bigger ones I had to process through, I realized that this was really early on in my journey as a practitioner. And I didn't realize I had sort of two clients that were really brutal, real heart jerkers, tear jerkers, of what had happened to them in those lifetimes. And just was sharing that with her to be able to identify what she was saying and acknowledge that, when you are going through different lifetime regressions, that you can find some of this pretty big traumatic stuff that needs to be released for the client to help them, because all of this stuff does impact them. And so, when I was sharing my experiences, I noticed I was still crying over it then. And I just thought, oh gosh, okay, so this is still some stuff that I need to release. And I was really grateful for the opportunity to be able to share that with her. And then I realized that they were saying, you need to talk about this tomorrow. And I was like, oh, what do I need to talk about? Everyone can assume that, the luxury of dying in old age, surrounded by your family members and peacefully drifting off as an exit point, that is one option of many. And it seems like if you've had that exit point once, the soul doesn't keep requiring the same experiences. And so it's quite a nice luxury to find out, oh, I'm old in my bed. You think, yes, good on you. This is going to be nice and easy for our emotions. But we shouldn't be trying to do nice and easy sessions as practitioners. We should be trying to find out and trust that the client's going to be having a lot of different experiences that we have to maturely support them through. And so it seems like asking now so subconscious, You showed them a scene where they exited as an old person surrounded by their loving family, and that's how they had the exit point. Why did you want to show them that now? What's the significance? And then they will say, well, the client's worried about, this current exit point and the shift and what it's going to look like, and they're afraid. And they're actually kind of upset. I don't get my retirement. I don't get to see my grandchildren. I don't get to see all of the stuff I assumed that I was working towards. And so the subconscious wants to lovingly remind them, you've already done that in another lifetime. We've given you that sense and that scene. And while it feels a little bit disjointed because you don't really fully remember that life where you were elderly, surrounded by your loved ones, and you just drifted off with the angels, basically, which is that beautiful light where you just feel like there is great familiar families waiting for you on the other side. So it's all exciting stuff. But when I was sharing this very emotionally with the practitioner and just, really getting it out, they were sort of saying, share this. And I was like, well, why? And they're like, because sometimes when I talk about certain things, it sounds like I'm not sympathetic to like exit points, and I super am. Like, I can cry really easily. I'm such an emotional little buttercup, aren't I, sometimes, because I deeply feel so much. And it's kind of like this work has kind of like burnt me out with crying over death scenes. And it's like when you experience with clients severely brutal attacks on family where their children are beaten to death brutally in front of them, they did nothing, and but just see themselves be attacked. And there was this one client that just, I still feel that. It was quite traumatic. So anyway, when I know that there is those types of exit points, which are super traumatizing and horrific and horrible, to know that people are going to shift without any pain, without any trauma, and they're going to find themselves in a better place. Yeah, I'm not going to cry over that. I'm not, because, there is actually really valid things to cry about. So I know that we all kind of, when we hear about ourselves shifting, and we get a little bit scared and worried, like, oh gosh, is it going to hurt? Am I going to be left behind? Or I'm going to leave others behind? These are all valid questions. Absolutely. And so when I was doing another session, I know I had 2 private sessions in 2 days. It's a luxury for me to be able to really just check in to see what else is going on for me. And is there anything else the teams want to clarify? And so I sort of realized I had a lot of my own personal nosy questions, because remember, lots of the public sessions are actually those clients' questions in some cases. And then there are some clients that just say, surprise me, Joe, put me really deep into relaxation, and then call in my subconscious and ask any questions you want. And that's really helpful too. So there's a mixture there. And I feel like everything that was shared in public sessions on Conversations with Heaven on Earth is exactly what our teams are wanting to be made public. And so there will be more sessions to come. Don't worry about that. There will be. But right now, they are wanting everyone to focus on themselves and their own situations, connecting into their own teams, being motivated and pushed enough to get their own sessions. That's super important. And yesterday was really fantastic because I got to release the stress of sharing this information. I didn't realize I had such stress about sharing all this information. And they very firmly reminded me that I was just the messenger, and that I am not to be responsible for this information. And therefore, it kind of seemed like I was super worried, and almost I had guilt that the information that I was sharing through these sessions was hurting people, traumatizing people, and putting people into fear. And I was so worried that I was doing something wrong in these sessions and getting the wrong information that was then upsetting people, triggering people, hurting people, terrorizing people, all that stuff. And so I forgot that that was a huge concern. And that's why I made lots of practitioner friends to be able to see, what are you guys getting? What is this information? Shall we do sessions together and, you know, work together as a team? And that was really beneficial and really supportive and really reassuring of me, that there was no way that I was manipulating the information. This wasn't a wish list. This wasn't my secret fantasy that I wanted everyone to be evacuated from this planet at all. This has got nothing to do with me personally, and I'm not that capable of twisting sessions for my own indulgences. Because to be honest, I really would love to be in denial that there is anything wrong with this planet. I would love to think that humanity would just grow up and start caring and loving each other, and you know, finding communities, and you know, really maturing at a rapid rate, like instantly, and then we could all be happy and trust that the food is going to nourish our bodies, and our education is going to nourish our minds, and everything is fair and just and kind and empowering and all that fantastic stuff. It's true. I want that. I think everyone wants that. Everyone deserves to have that and want that. So for quite some time, as I was worried that there was no one was getting, I couldn't see that anyone else was getting this information. So I sort of, you know, blamed myself. What am I doing wrong? And so I'd really listen back to the questions I was asking to make sure I was absolutely not mis-questioning. So then it was defaulting into the same answers. I out point blankly asked in many sessions, you know, where is the new earth? What is the new earth? Is the new earth here? You know, like I really asked a lot of questions to really just poke and test and experience and explore. And, you know, now that I've done so many sessions and it's the same information, it's consistently the same information. And it's fantastic when I know clients who do not believe that the new earth is not here. I love those sessions because the practitioner is pretty convinced they're right, because I've heard an influencer say it, but they haven't had it in session. So they're just going to be, you know, kind to like teach me something. And of course, the subconscious always teaches them something, doesn't it? Because they were wanting to not hear that information. They wanted to be here because they're, you know, they're building properties and they're wanting a future here and all of that stuff, which is very reasonable, but you know, we can still be in denial and still hear the truth at the same time. So, you know, where is the balance there? So it was fantastic because they removed that pressure that I was placing on myself and worrying. And what they very firmly said was, I am not putting people in fear. I am not triggering people. I'm not traumatizing people at all. I am preparing people. And there's a huge difference. And while, yes, to be prepared, you've got to go through that roller coaster of, you know, what the heck does this mean? How does this apply to me? But I'm finding that most people that I speak to say, I heard this information the first time, Joanne, from one of your sessions, and I deeply resonated with it. And it was like, aha, alignment. Yes, this ticks all of my intuition senses. This makes now complete, utter sense what is going on here. And so that's fantastic to know that that happens, because from my perspective, I just see that humanity is so hurt and so upset and so disaligned that I want to just pick up humanity, protect it from anything else, squeeze out that density and just throw you on the new earth and say, jazz hands and have fun, my friends. You deserve this now. Because when you remove yourselves from the 3D and you reflect back on the way of this planet and the way of this life, it's like your soul shudders and thinks, oh God, why was I so attached to that? That was not my best choices. Anyway, so there's that. It was interesting. It's interesting times. And again, there is truly nothing to fear at all. And when we do start flipping into a little bit of fear, it's because then it's kind of like a seesaw. Trust and faith is here, and then fear and worry and the dense emotions are here. And we kind of do this roller coaster sort of wave, emotional wave. And that is fine, but we have to figure out what we believe, what we feel, what we can trust, and what we have faith in. And this is the tricky thing, isn't it? Is that we can't see the information that's been given to us from these high dimensional beings, can we? We can feel it. Definitely we can feel it. But, wouldn't we love it? Like, introducing my new guest. Here's my subconscious. He's just come down from, the ninth dimension just to have a cup of tea with us and a chat. That would be so easy, right? But because this density, because this 3D, these 3D lives are about mastering emotions and not buying into that density and raising our frequency, trusting that we are loved, trusting that we are high dimensional beings, all of this sort of stuff, and remembering who we are to the best of our capabilities while in 3D, without all our special other tool belts from other lifetimes. So it's quite a mission. But remember, when we do have other lifetimes, it does seem like there's so much more easier in some regards. And so I think that gets a bit boring for many who have had these easier, idyllic, really peaceful lives. Right now, we're like, what? How could we be bored with that? But it's like they're reminding me of how my family and we can go away just for, 1 or 2 nights, and it can feel like a massive recharge. Go by the beach and, and have, a night or 2 by the beach. And that feels like a huge, long vacation, to the point where we kind of know when we're ready to go, because we're just like, we've got that peace and balance, and then we're charged, and then, right, let's get back into it. And so we are active relectors, really, as a family. And so I sort of think, God, would it be fun to have that perfect paradise? Like, lots of people think, I'm a bit worried. 5D sounds so fantastic. New Earth sounds so fantastic. We just get bored because we're so used to this rat race here on Earth. And it doesn't seem like we would be. I mean, that's just kind of our lack of understanding what fantastic experiences we have awaiting for us. And so, of course, I got to experience the New Earth in a session, and got to understand more of the processes, what's happening there and why and how. And I really appreciate, again, just confirmation that all is well, and that there is great support, and it is going to be a beautiful transition for people, for beings to enter into this new way of life. And they're very protective of this. It's incredible, the measures that they're going through to make sure that no density at all. They're like dense. They were sort of saying it was like density dust. They don't want any residue or remnants of any density at all. And it's kind of like they have this space which is just allocated for just arrivals, and there are many greeters that are going to be there, and to be able to just, I don't know, like energetically vacuum the density dust, the little remnants, the little gremlins, because they just do not want any of that. And it was kind of like Gaia was sort of like saying she wants her guests to like wipe their feet at the door. So it's kind of like she's like that was sort of they so friendly with me. They sort of have jokes, and it was kind of like take your shoes off before entering into the carpet kind of thing. So that made sense to me. Anyway, so all is truly wow. It's so beautiful, and it's just everything we need right now. It's so healing. And so I think a lot of people who are waiting for these big healing moments and this great big true community, and unity, it sort of seems like we're not going to get that here, unfortunately, even though we really want it to, when we're craving for that profound unity for all, like, so for all of the countries to come together and for all individual countries to come together, it's not actually going to be here. So, but the hope and the craving that you have for that profound unity is what you're really tapping into in the fifth dimensional lifestyle of that. So that will explain that. So there's so much healing that goes on. And also got to experience another 3D planet where some people go, and I found that very interesting, because with these sessions now we're just getting so much more detailed information of why these people are going to these 3D planets and how it looks for them to complete their 3D. In summary, the reason why some people still go to 3D planets is because they haven't got their true connection and intuition and their true focus on self. And so they're so distracted. And so it's really interesting. They showed me how when you get to a 3D planet after this shift, you're still in your physical bodies. You still feel the density of 3D, so you don't realize you're not on Earth anymore. But you actually have a veil of forgetfulness of your actual families who are not with you. And so you don't actually panic about what's happened in the past. And you're so driven to move forward and survive and to find to kind of work with other people, but then you realize that other people sort of slow you down. So it's a really interesting independent experience in this other 3D planet, to really fine tune and trust yourself and your instincts and your intuition as you are going through this gauntlet of a 3D experience. It was quite interesting to see that, because I know that there are some simulations to be able to finish the 3D, and that seems to be primarily a lot who are going to the new Earth. In this situation, there was a physical element to this 3D planet, because there is mix. It's not actually a planet, it's actually no, it sounds strange, a spaceship that has the capability of 3 and 50 energies within it. And so they're all sort of working together, but because it's a ship and it's not a planet, it's complicated anyway. And so I really found that quite interesting to understand more details, and this is why I encourage you all to have your own sessions, to be able to address any of your own inner work that may be not in your consciousness tapping on your shoulder. And so, you know, we can easily release that. And when I released the pressure that I was putting on myself, delivering this information and worrying about how people would be so scared hearing this information, I don't want to scare anyone at all. Actually, you know, that's the last thing I want to do, but I want to inform people. And so, you know, I want to say sorry to all those people that started listening to these sessions and got freaked out. You know, yeah, that was me too. When I started listening to the sessions, it was so intensive. And, you know, but you know, that's not me putting that on you. You know, that was your journey that you had to go through to get to this point to understand it. And I hope that I've done enough work and enough information, got enough sessions and enough content for you to be able to navigate and work through for you to be able to understand why things are going to happen as they have to happen, and why we have to be evacuated from this planet that should have been fantastic and beautiful. And it's just, you know, it's heartbreaking and feels so sad that it's got this far. But, you know, there is great lessons there, but, you know, sometimes that just doesn't feel like it's enough to justify what we're going through. And so, you know, they can see it from the bigger perspective and all is well from their perspective, but they are really pushing a lot. And so I was feeling certain feelings and I didn't know why I was feeling certain feelings. And so I asked the subconscious, well, the practitioner asked the subconscious, like, what was going on there? And my subconscious was like, oh, whoopsie, sorry, that was actually me. She was thinking about me and I was tapping into my subconscious, and my subconscious was going through. He basically said, I have 2 arms and I'm juggling 1,000 balls all at the same time. And one slight slip up or miscalculation and a whole lot of stuff can kind of like fumble around. And so he was saying that for some of these guardians, some big stuff's kind of happened behind the scenes that were a big fumble and it impacted many. And so he was just finding it frustrating once again to have to deal with all this extra sort of work, because it is, he's like, you don't realize how busy we are. And there is so much to factor in. And, so they're still processing and working out a lot of the stuff that they need to for their perspective. But remember that planet Earth is just one of their many projects that they're working on right now. And so, there's a lot of things going on for them. And there's consequences if they fuck up, or they don't really fuck up. Sorry, that was me. But if they miscalculate certain things or have certain sort of like hopes and projections, and then something completely kind of gets taken, people have free will and other beings have free will. And so when they are having to factor in and plan all of this and juggle all of these different elements, and then sort of someone comes in and throws a big basketball and you've got 1,000 tennis balls up in the air, it kind of does do interesting things. So it was interesting because they expressed the reason why they now have more access to interference. Because another collective striked first. So another collective who was a bit grumpy and wants to handbrake this shift because they don't want to move, and they have entitlement issues. And when they don't want to move, they are still doing things to kind of throw a spanner in the works. And so this was just another attempt, and my subconscious was like, it's so pitiful because it doesn't actually stop what's going to come. It just adds more sort of workload for them. But he's pretty pleased that they did it now that it's all kind of managed and under control, because the other collective broke the agreement of no interference. And so they had another committee meeting, because they love these meetings, right? To sort everything out and, decide how to control and guide and support humanity and all the beings on this planet and the planet. And so because of this first breach, which wasn't my collective, which is not from my collective is the Icturians. And so the Icturians were like, well, someone else has started that, and, we're not going to, we're not going to judge. But yeah, it is probably time now that we, start interfering. And, so it was kind of like they did seem like they were pretty pleased to now be able to have more interference. And I explained it the other day, probably poorly, but I'm still human, that the interference is more just more getting people's attention more, and it's not really ghost contact, so it's not really like the Nana Gang. It's more like you hearing a voice that, you're driving along in the car and that you're alone in the car, and then you hear what it sounds like a passenger in the back seat telling you something sort of to get your attention. It's kind of that interference. So it is just firm guidance with love. Let's just say that. So of course people will dismiss it. No, I'm hearing things. That's just nonsense. It must have just been the radio. It must have been someone with a megaphone outside my car. People will just dismiss this as quickly as they can because no one wants to be told what to do, right? People get really pissed off when they get told what to do, because they don't want to be told what to do. They are miserable in their lives and quite happy with it. That was judgment, or is it an observation? Because I feel like I've had a few clients that, don't want to be told what to do, and yet their subconscious comes in and tells them what to do. And I still see that they don't step up and respect that information. So I sort of think, well, why would you want a session? If you're not going to listen to your subconscious, why bother? But they're just sort of tire kickers. They just, really wanted to make sure that the new earth was here, because they're pretty sure the new earth is here. And they're pretty sure that I'm wrong. And all of my sessions, all of my hundreds of clients were a balmy. And so when you come in to have a session and you've got those assumptions and you judge people's sessions, and then you come in and you have your own session, which confirms all the other information, and I'm heckling the subconscious, like, no, you're just lying, aren't you? Subconscious, are you just lying to my client? Because she believes the new earth is here. So why are you not telling her the truth? Why are you not saying that the new earth is here? Because that's what she believes and that's what she thinks. So why subconscious? Why would you lie to my client? Ooh, they don't like that, really. Very firmly, very strong with the responses and the replies back. And I know that it's not really focused and directed at me, is it? Because they know that I'm not a heckler. They know I'm just a messenger and I'm just trying the best I can. And so, yes, it's very interesting to see those clients channeling that strong information, where I just think, well, they'd have to listen to that, wouldn't they? Because there's no other way they would not be able to dismiss that as, oh, that was my imagination, because it was brutal in statements. Anyway. We're just so funny, and we make things so complicated here in the 3D, don't we? And I guess that's part of the fun. So anyway, So for those practitioners, they just wanted me to remind those practitioners, when you're uncomfortable that your clients are crying, do not rush them through this. You're not just sitting there watching them bawl their eyes out and create snot bubbles with joy. Of course not, because it's horrible to see people cry. It's so uncomfortable, because you just want to, okay, stop that now. Sessions over, cups of tea time, big hugs. That's what I would want to do. And I remember really being almost a little bit scared, like, oh, this is such a beautiful person, they're so lovely, and they want big answers. God, what is those other lifetimes going to show? I hope it's not horrific. And yes, sometimes they are horrific, but you process it through and you get your balance and neutral as a practitioner. And I probably did this myself when I started seeing my clients getting really upset. I want to get them out of that state as fast as possible. Okay, so leave that scene now, subconscious, and we'll move forward to another important day. I'm just like, oh, quickly, let's go out of here, because I don't want to impact myself or get my client upset. And I remember Dolores saying very firmly, do not rush those clients. They need to process and release those tears, which could have been within their souls for hundreds of years. So you allow them, give them the grace, and give them the opportunity to release and heal and let go. This is the time to let go of everything. And so then I feel frustrated, like, well, why is it that they have to have all these traumas from other lifetimes and impacting them this lifetime? It seems so unfair, and I sort of feel all sad and victimized for our clients and myself and all that sort of stuff. And they say, well, they have to overcome it. They have to feel that density, match that density, release it and overcome it and grow. It's part of how the soul wants to have these lessons and these experiences, and it's all purposeful, and trust that we know what we're doing, Joanne. So anyway, I've learned a lot and I love to be able to share it with you. So practitioners, please, I know it's hard. It's so hard to see these people so vulnerable, reliving big trauma things, but just take a breath yourself and know this is fantastic, because they've been triggered into tears and triggered into reminding themselves of something. And we can, when we don't lose our minds and don't rush them, we can actually unpack it really, really well and heal them profoundly. We don't heal them, but we have the opportunity in these sessions to heal them profoundly. And so Don't rush these sessions, because everything that the subconscious is showing the clients in the other lifetimes is extremely significant, even though it's uncomfortable to hear it. And I find those clients who have had really traumatic experiences in other lifetimes, they're really not keen to listen to the sessions again, because they know that had big impacts and lots of tears. And they're like, listening to a session for 2 hours that I know I'm crying and I know that I'm going to cry myself. No, thank you. I'd rather watch something else. So we can understand that. But when you've healed from that, and this is what I tell my clients, you've healed from that session today, because you've experienced that and you've learned those lessons and you've been able to release all of that. And so when they have that sort of trauma, I ask the subconscious, so how am I going to feel now after this session? Because a lot of the emotional impacts and the physical impacts are still held on the body today, even though it was other lifetimes, because they needed to overcome these lessons for this lifetime, because this is the important one. They don't get to come back to this density to play it out again. They don't have that luxury opportunity. They've done that. They've tried to do that many different times. And this is the most important one to deal with. So honor the journey, trust that these tears are cleansing, healing tears, and allow them to experience it. Don't rush it, but then don't just, there's this, when they kind of can breathe slightly again and the tears have sort of stopped flowing, just allow it. And it's very challenging, but that's my recommendation. Don't rush it, because if you rush it, then they don't actually have the opportunity to fully release it. And so when they listen back to it, that still may make them cry. And so often when I say, I know I've done a better job, when they listen back to the sessions and they're like, I'm hearing myself cry, and it is a really horrible scene. And that's really unfortunate that happened to that person in that lifetime. I don't feel that connected to that person, because I know that it was me. And I know I had all those feelings, but I'm separate. And so it's really good to know that they've finally got that closure from that lifetime and those lessons, which is fantastic. So yay for this work, and yay for all the subconsciouses. We love you guys so much, and we appreciate all of the wisdom and support and guidance that you guys give us all the time. So we can just all take a minute to just appreciate all those guides who are working with 2 hands and 1,000 tennis balls. And I guess we could say we're a tennis ball, aren't we? Are we a prickly tennis ball, or are we the ones with like no fuzz left and a little bit lopsided? I don't know. I think 3D kind of gives us a little bit of a lopsided. I'm feeling a bit bald on some patches where it's been really worn down. So anyway, there's that. Okay, so love you guys. I hope you're having a fantastic weekend. I hope that you are finding the joy and the happiness that you all deserve. And I truly, truly, truly wish the very best for all of you.